What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're excited to talk about free agents as they relate to the Dallas Cowboys, specifically Dallas Cowboys players who are set to be free agents. We're about to go through all of the pending free agents, discuss who we think the Cowboys should bring back this offseason. Obviously, there's a lot to this. There's the franchise tag possibility. For what it's worth, we're releasing this video on Monday, February 27th, but I am putting it together on Wednesday, February 22nd. So it's possible that a franchise tag happened between now and then. If that's the case, then this video is never going to see the light of day, so it doesn't really matter. The family and I are doing some traveling this weekend, which is why we're getting ahead of schedule on some things. But that being the case, let's go ahead and jump to it. Here are all of the Dallas Cowboys free agents, and obviously we're getting closer and closer to free agency. The Cowboys do have the franchise tag at their disposal if they want to place it on one player. We did a video about that recently here on the channel. Make sure you do subscribe to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel so you don't miss any of these things. If you had to put somebody or put the tag on somebody here, I think the answer is Tony Pollard. I don't know how we have Tony's last name misspelled here, but let's just kind of fly through this real quick. Offensively, Cooper Rush, Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle isn't going to go anywhere. Don't worry about that. Dalton Schultz, T.Y. Hilton, Noah Brown, Terrence Steele, also not going to go anywhere. Jason Peters, Connor McGovern, and Alec Lindstrom, who's already, again, one of those that's not going to be going anywhere in that box. Don't need to worry about that. Defensively, perhaps the most important player on this list, Leighton Vander Esch, Anthony Barr, Luke Gifford, Anthony Brown, C.J. Goodwin, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Hankins, Carlos Watkins, Donovan Wilson, also a sneaky candidate for the franchise tag, and Wanye Thomas, again, not going anywhere. And then from a specialist perspective, Brett Maher, the Cowboys basically announced that they were going to be moving on from him. Not a shock, an unfortunate way for his career with the Cowboys to end for the second time. And then two long snappers in Jake McQuaid and Matt Overton. Matt Overton, by the way, has an awesome YouTube channel worth checking out. Going to see if we can get him on, and have a chat here across the offseason, talk about this past season, how he came in for the injured Jake McQuaid. But I'm going to be honest here. There's not a name that I feel like you absolutely have to bring back. There's not a name that if the Cowboys lost this particular player, pick one you want. There's not a name you can find that I would feel devastated by. There are some certainly that I would be, a little bit bothered, a little bit perturbed to see the Cowboys lose in free agency, but I don't think there is a player who, if the Cowboys lost, it would feel like the roster was totally decimated, which is why we said in our video talking about players and candidates to place the franchise tag on that you really could probably argue that not using the tag is the best way to go. I think the four candidates are Tony Pollard, as mentioned, although it's $11 million, basically, if we're rounding, that you have to give to him. That's a lot of money, even though his name will be spelled right when you do give it to him. Again, apologies. Sometimes making graphics is difficult, people. Dalton Schultz is the player who the Cowboys tagged last year, so you do have to kind of consider that. But $13 million, which is what it would be this year for him, is a little bit too rich, I think, for most people. And then defensively, Leighton Vander Esch, like I said, is probably the most important player on this list. And Donovan Wilson, if you really, really, really want to keep him, but it's worth mentioning the Cowboys do have both Jaron Kearse and Malik Hooker under contract for 2023. So that being said, I've said it twice now. Leighton Vander Esch is the most important player in my estimation on this list. That's the one I want to see the Cowboys bring back. The problem is that Leighton Vander Esch has probably played himself out of the range of comfortability for the Cowboys from a financial perspective. Leighton's thing, and if you rewind the clock almost 2 years now, in fact, it was like 2 or 3 days after the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons in 2021, that they declined the fifth-year option on Leighton Vander Esch, which meant that he obviously was entering that 2021 season on the final year of his rookie deal. He played very well. The Cowboys and Leighton Vander Esch, like Morris Claiborne after the 2015 season, were able to come to terms on a one-year sort of prove-it deal, whatever the case, however you want to call it. He played very well. I think Leighton Vander Esch was one of the best defenders on the Cowboys this past season, one of the best players on the Cowboys, period. And so he might be out of their price range. I think that's an uncomfortable thing to admit. And the Cowboys, for what it's worth, are kind of remaking their linebacker core. Damone Clark obviously came on. It was super impressive how he played. A lot of people, myself included, thought it was going to be sort of a redshirt year for him. So you've got Damone Clark. We'll see if Jabril Cox is able to kind of get in the mix defensively. Luke Gifford, I think the Cowboys will probably bring back. He's a valuable special teamer. Mike McCarthy did say that he could have played some defensive snaps if he had to down the stretch of the season. So I think you've got enough to work with. And then obviously we do have free agency and the draft, and the Cowboys can obviously attack different positions of need in those senses. But I would not be shocked if there's another team that really wants Leighton Vander Esch and is really kind of willing to pay over the top money to get him. And if that's the case, I think you have to say no if you're the Cowboys. But man, that one would hurt just a little bit. He is the one I want the most for the Cowboys to sort of keep. If we for the moment, stay on the defensive side of the ball. Anthony Barr, I don't think it will be a high priority for the Cowboys to retain him. Again, mentioned Damone Clark, and obviously there are different options and points of depth for them, so I don't think it's a matter of high concern. Anthony Brown is one that is difficult because the Cowboys do have a need at starting cornerback, obviously opposite of Trayvon Diggs on the outside specifically. Now, Deron Blaine is obviously somebody who came along very well for the Cowboys as a rookie this past year, but I think we all like the idea and the option of him playing in nickel, playing in the slot. Now, Jordan Lewis is coming back from injury as well, so he does give you another option there. And so you could just rely on Deron Blaine kind of taking the next level, playing on the outside full time opposite of Trayvon Diggs. But why do that? Why do that when you could obviously attack this position in free agency? Now, I don't know if Anthony Brown is going to be back because of his specific injury situation. He might not be back for the start of the regular season, and so you have to factor that in, right? If he's going to be somebody who's a starting corner for you, then maybe that's not somebody who you really want to pay. Now, maybe you're able to get him at a discounted rate because of that, right? Maybe the Cowboys are able to get Anthony Brown kind of on one of those one-year deals. He can help his market for 2024. That seems possible to me, but it still doesn't help or answer what they're going to do at outside corner in the time until he's ready to go. I know this video and this conversation we're having is about free agents on the Cowboys. We'll definitely have some about free agents we want to see them go out and get. And one of the names on my list, at least, is Patrick Peterson. I would love to see the Cowboys finally get Patrick Peterson. They've been connected to him several different times. In fact, at the beginning of the 2021 season, which was his first in Minnesota, Peterson said that the Cowboys, the Niners, and the Eagles all made serious runs at him. Now, the Eagles are going to have a need, obviously, at corner with James Bradbury expected to leave and get the bag in free agency. And so if the Cowboys, if we're just being hypothetical here, and this relates to Anthony Brown, if they're able to bring in kind of that secondary starting opposite corner of Trayvon Diggs, I think that really goes a long way. Now, for what it's worth, we're talking free agency, so money is a thing. The Cowboys are going to have to pay Trayvon Diggs, and that's got to be part of their offseason budget. So you can't do it all. You can't have it all. You can definitely get creative, and we need to see the Cowboys do that and be aggressive in certain ways. But I think they definitely spend in free agency on the corner position. I just don't know if it's going to be Anthony Brown because of the injury situation. That's an unfortunate thing. CJ Goodwin, I think, might as well go down the list defensively. He's a valuable special teamer as well. A little bit older, but the Cowboys really value that. John Fossil obviously has really turned the group around, and so I could see him returning. Again, none of these are high priorities, but it definitely makes sense. Whereas some of the other ones, I think you can kind of say, man, that's whatever. Dante Fowler, I just don't know that there's enough room for him, right? The Cowboys it's a good problem to have a lot of defensive ends. They got to find more snaps for Sam Williams, obviously, in his second season in the NFL. Maybe they let Dante Fowler walk. I think we all want to see them bring Jonathan Hankins back. They need help along the interior. Even if they do bring Hankins back, though, they have to add. We want to see some elite defensive tackle prospects on the Cowboys. That has not happened in a very long time. I think Carlos Watkins along those lines is kind of undervalued. I think we don't necessarily totally appreciate what he brought to the Cowboys, but again, you can only have so much. And so if I have to kind of limit things, if I have to be somewhat real, I'm probably going to keep Jonathan Hankins and let Carlos Watkins walk. Because look, I would love to sit here. We would all love to sit here and say, like, let's just bring everybody back. Let's bring the whole crew, the whole group back, and we'll do this. We'll kind of run it back, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to be real. You're probably going to lose a lot of these players. And I think you're probably going to lose Donovan Wilson. I think he's played himself into a really nice contract. And plus the Cowboys, like I said, have Jaron Kearse and Malik Hooker both under contract. They have Marquise Bell, who they loved last year as an undrafted free agent. They do still have Israel Mukuamu, who did play some corner but has some versatility, and it really doesn't matter to Dan Quinn. So I think it's just a numbers game, and I think Donovan Wilson is out. So for me, defensively, I think you're bringing back Leighton Vander Esch. I think that's priority number one overall, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. I think Luke Gifford is coming back if I'm kind of playing a prediction game. I think Anthony Brown is coming back if they don't land somebody else in free agency. It's a little bit contingent on factors for me. I think CJ Goodwin's coming back. I think Jonathan Hankins is coming back. I think everybody else is probably playing elsewhere in 2023. From a specialist standpoint, we talked about Brett Maher. We don't have to relitigate that situation. Obviously, the Cowboys are going to have a new kicker, so time will tell who that winds up being. I do think it's worth mentioning the name Mason Crosby. If the Packers aren't able to figure things out there, obviously he has a history with Mike McCarthy. We'll see, a bit up there in age, but the Cowboys are obviously going to have a new kicker next season. And I do think one of these long snappers is their snapper in 2023. Jake McQuaid got hurt, so maybe they feel confident in that moving forward. Matt Overton, I thought, outside of the very first snap in that first game against the Rams, was really great for the Cowboys. So I think it's one of those players. If we move to the offensive side of the ball, though, Cooper Rush is an interesting one. It remains to be seen how NFL teams are going to evaluate him. Is there an NFL team who feels like he's a starter, a candidate, a competitor to be a starter on their team? I don't think so, but he's obviously one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, I do think that his situation kind of lends itself to Dallas. He knows the team very well, but he obviously knows Kellen Moore very well. Perhaps he feels it's in his best interest to follow Kellen to the Chargers. If I had to guess, though, I would guess that Cooper Rush is back. Rico Dowdle's coming back. I don't think there's any need to really worry about that. I think we're all fine there. But Tony Pollard, this is the one that I'm kind of torn on. And I know I said Leighton Vander Esch 3 times was the highest priority for me. And that includes Tony Pollard on this list. I love Tony Pollard. He's a wonderful player. He's an explosive player, one of the few that the Cowboys have on their offense. And you have to have a lot of them. You have to this offseason get more of them if you're the Cowboys. So it sounds silly and like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth to say you have to get more explosive offensively, but it's okay to let Tony Pollard walk. The unfortunate reality is that Pollard's dealing with this injury situation. He does not have the same wear and tear on him that most running backs do when their rookie contract expires, and that's a big plus for him, all right? If the Cowboys want to bring him back, it would be awesome. I think you can argue both of these things. This is one of those unique times where either option makes sense. It would make sense to let him walk. It would make sense to bring him back. And even if you had the third option, it would make sense to apply the tag. I don't think there's a wrong way that the Cowboys can go about handling Tony Pollard. This truly is a matter of preference, although obviously the whole running back room in general might be different if they do move on from Zeke Elliott, if they do restructure his contract. Obviously, time will tell there as well. He's not on this list because he's not a free agent, but that is a matter that the Cowboys are going to have to address in the coming months, coming weeks, really. Dalton Schultz, I think we're all in agreement here, is going to be elsewhere in 2023. All the best to him. We had a good time, but it's time for Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot to kind of run this show. I don't know about T.Y. Hilton or Noah Brown. I mean, the Cowboys need to add a wide receiver. Maybe they add Odell Beckham Jr. Who knows? I would love to see them draft a wide receiver. I would love to see them add somebody. And this doesn't mean T.Y. Hilton or Noah Brown, because if the Cowboys added, say, Odell Beckham Jr., as much as I love Jackson Smith and Jigba, friend of Blogging the Boys, if you sign Odell Beckham Jr., granted that is still a bit of a roll of the dice, you do not have to spend your first-round pick on a wide receiver. I'm a fan of protecting all of your interests, of protecting yourself so you're not stuck in any one direction. That being said, I'm fine if the Cowboys move on. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought Noah Brown back. Maybe T.Y. Hilton wants to wait a little while like he did last year, but I mean, it's been a long time at this point. It's kind of time. It's kind of time to see Simi Fehoko and see what Simi Fehoko has to offer you. So maybe that means Noah Brown's time with the Cowboys is over. Like I said, Terrence Steele's not going anywhere. He's a restricted free agent, so don't spend any time worrying about that. He will be back with the Cowboys in 2023. Jason Peters, there were reports at the beginning of the offseason that the Cowboys felt like he was going to be back with them. I would love that. I don't think that that's going to break the bank. I think that's a good thing for your offensive line overall, especially if Terrence Steele is not ready to go week 1. So sign me up for that. Connor McGovern, I thought it was interesting. ESPN's Todd Archer wrote about this free agent class for the Cowboys and noted that Connor McGovern's market could be bigger, better, whatever you want to call it, better, whatever than most Cowboys fans think it might be, just because of the lack of names available in free agency. So the Cowboys might lose Connor McGovern. They do need help along the interior. If Connor McGovern is gone, who is your backup interior lineman? Who's your backup center? You don't really have one. Yeah, Matt Farniok exists, but Connor McGovern is a point of depth that I think we sometimes take for granted, although I do think that you ultimately probably do lose him in free agency. So for me, offensively, I'm going to say Cooper Rush is back. I think Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle are back. Terrence Steele is not going anywhere, and Jason Peters. And then defensively, we said Leighton Vander Esch. We said maybe Anthony Brown, CJ Goodwin. I know he's defensive here, but he is a specialist. Jonathan Hankins, and then one of your long snappers. So that's kind of what it comes down to for me. Obviously, we'll find out more in the coming weeks. We'll hear more rumors and chatter, obviously, as the NFL Combine moves along. And we'll keep you updated here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. So make sure you do subscribe. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. You can send me an email, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.